The golf cart came to a jerking stop inches from my driveway. I was elbow-deep in my truck's engine, trying to replace a busted radiator hose before the weekend, when I heard that familiar nasal voice. "Victor, we need to talk." I didn't have to look up. Only one person in the entire neighborhood had the gall to address me like that while I was clearly busy. Clarissa Hensley, president of the Oak Pines HOA and self-declared queen of the cul-de-sac. She climbed out of the golf cart wearing oversized sunglasses, a pastel blouse that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage, and a clipboard clutched like a weapon. I wiped my hands on a rag and sighed. "What is it this time, Clarissa?" She flicked her bobbed hair and waved the clipboard like it was a summons. "I'm just giving you a heads up. My sister and her family are coming in from Scottsdale this weekend. I told them you'd be happy to show them around town, give them the Victor experience." I blinked. "Excuse me, you know," she said like I was the idiot, "your rustic charm, the local farmer's market, may be a hike through the canyon trails. They don't get to see real country life often. I'm not a tour guide," I said flatly, "and I've got plans." Her mouth pinched like she'd bitten into a lemon. "Victor, it's important we show guests that Oak Pines is hospitable. You're a resident. That makes you responsible for our reputation." I laughed. "No, Clarissa, that makes me responsible for my own property. Not entertaining your family." She huffed, scribbled something on her clipboard, and stormed off, muttering about non-compliance and disciplinary review. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. Friday afternoon rolled around, and I was finishing up work in my garage when an SUV the size of a boat pulled up in front of my house. Out spilled Clarissa's sister, Angela, her husband, their teenage son Brandon, and a dog the size of a small bear. They didn't knock. They didn't ring. They just walked into my yard like it was a public park. Angela waved like we were old friends. "You must be Victor. Clarissa said you'd be taking us around today." "Nope," I said, not even looking up from the toolbox. Angela frowned. "But we flew all this way. We're only here for 3 days." "Sounds like a you problem," I said. Brandon kicked over one of my lawn gnomes. The dog took a dump near my porch. Angela gasped. "Is this how you treat guests?" "You're not guests," I said. "You're trespassers." That night I found an envelope taped to my door. Inside was a printed notice from the HOA citing me for unneighborly conduct, failure to participate in community engagement, and get this, willful neglect of hospitality duties. It was signed by Clarissa, and it came with a fine for $500. I nearly tore it in half, but then I noticed the HOA seal at the bottom was missing. And the signature line. It didn't list any board members, just Clarissa's name. She'd made it up. Clarissa had used HOA letterhead to fabricate a fine. Oh, she had no idea who she was messing with. Saturday morning, I was hauling a load of firewood from the side yard when I noticed the dog again, Clarissa's sister's furry menace, sniffing around my garden beds. Its leash was dragging behind it, but no one was holding it. I scanned the street. No sign of Brandon or his parents. I dropped the logs and stepped toward the mutt, clapping my hands to shoo it away from the tomato plants. It gave me a lazy glance and proceeded to dig a hole straight through the mulch. Before I could grab the leash, a voice rang out from across the road. "Don't touch him. He's sensitive." Angela came barreling out of Clarissa's front door in bright yoga pants and a glittery wine-o'clock hoodie, holding a mug like she was hosting a reality show. "He just needs space," she called, jogging over with zero urgency. "He's on my property," I said. "And he just uprooted half my basil." Angela clucked her tongue. "He's a rescue. He has anxiety in unfamiliar environments. You can't expect him to adjust overnight." I pointed at the leash. "Then keep him on that, or better yet, in your sister's yard," she scoffed. "Clarissa said this whole block is pet-friendly. It's in the community charter." "It says pets must be leashed and under control," I replied. "That doesn't mean they get free rein to destroy someone's landscaping." Angela yanked the dog's leash and muttered something under her breath about hostile men with control issues. I let her walk off without another word. I spent the next hour repairing the damage, repacking soil, replanting what I could, filling in the crater the dog left behind. I had just gotten the last plant upright when a police cruiser rolled slowly down the block and parked right in front of my driveway. Two officers stepped out. One of them I recognized, Officer Latham. The other was new. Latham greeted me with a nod. "Afternoon, Vic. We got a call about a disturbance involving a pet." I blinked. "You're kidding me." The younger officer flipped open a notepad. "Caller reported that you threatened to harm a dog and used aggressive language toward a visiting family." "You mean the off-leash dog that tore apart my garden? That one?" I pointed to the trampled herbs. Latham let out a slow breath. "Vic, I already figured there was more to it. But we had to respond. Protocol." I showed them the leash marks in the soil, the fresh paw prints, the broken stems. Latham took photos with his phone. "You got any security footage?" he asked. "I do now," I said. "Installed cameras out front this morning." "After yesterday?" Latham raised an eyebrow. "Something happened yesterday." I didn't answer. I disappeared into the garage, came back with a USB stick and handed it over. "This has yesterday evening and this morning. You'll want to watch it." They left 10 minutes later, promising to review the footage. I went back to work, already planning my next move. By early afternoon, a tow truck rolled into the neighborhood and parked near my mailbox. The driver hopped out and started examining my F-150 like he was about to hook it up. I dropped the wrench I was holding and stormed over. "Hey, what are you doing?" The guy held up a clipboard. "Order from Oak Pines HOA. Said this vehicle's been left unattended and is violating overnight parking rules. It's parked in my driveway. Take it up with them," he said, tapping the paper. I snatched it out of his hands. Sure enough, it was on a fake HOA letterhead, same font, same layout, but no official seal, no board approval, just Clarissa's signature again. "You hook this truck," I warned, "and I'll press charges for trespassing and attempted theft." He hesitated. "Look, man, I'm just doing what the ticket says." I pulled out my phone and dialed. "Then you'll want to stay put. I'm calling the sheriff." The driver backed off fast. "No need for that. I'll double-check the work order." He peeled off before I finished dialing. That night, I printed out both the fake parking citation and the fraudulent fine from the day before. I added timestamps, highlighted the missing seal, and stapled them together. Then I drove down to the county clerk's office and filed a formal complaint for document forgery and harassment. Attached were still frames from my security footage, Clarissa taping the envelope to my door, Angela letting the dog run wild, and the tow truck guy snooping around my driveway. The clerk raised her eyebrows while scanning the forms. "You're not the first person to bring something like this in about Oak Pines." "Really?" she nodded. "We've had 3 other residents file similar complaints in the last 2 months, mostly about forged notices and unauthorized fines." I leaned in. "What happens now? County fraud investigators get involved," she said. "And if what you submitted holds up, we'll recommend a formal audit of the HOA's actions going back at least a year." That was exactly what I wanted to hear. By Sunday morning, the neighborhood was buzzing. Word had gotten out, probably from the tow truck driver, that something serious was about to go down at Oak Pines. People walked by my house more often than usual, pretending to jog or water their lawns while sneaking glances at my garage. I didn't mind. I had nothing to hide. Around noon, a gray sedan pulled up in front of Clarissa's house. 2 people stepped out, one in a county badge, another carrying a thick leather folder. They rang her bell, and within seconds, Clarissa appeared looking flustered, her hair still in rollers. They spoke for a while on her porch. She tried to laugh something off, but the investigator didn't crack a smile. Then they handed her a folded document and pointed at the folder. Clarissa turned pale and disappeared inside without another word. I was sipping a cold beer on my porch when Angela marched over, red-faced and breathing heavily. "What did you do?" she hissed. "You mean besides defending my property from fake fines and illegal tow attempts, you're ruining this entire weekend?" Clarissa's in tears. She said you made up some story to embarrass her. I held up my phone. Want to see the footage? There's no story, just facts. Angela's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Behind her, Brandon was trying to fly a drone over my fence. I walked past her, reached up, and caught it midair. Tell your kid if he flies this over my property again, I'm reporting him for surveillance without consent. Angela grabbed the drone and stormed off. That evening, I got a call from Officer Latham. We reviewed the footage, he said. Everything checks out. The dog wasn't just on your property, it wrecked your garden. And the tow truck, definitely not authorized. We're escalating this to the county prosecutor. I leaned back in my chair, watching the sun dip behind the hills. Appreciate the call, Latham. One more thing, he added. You might want to attend the next HOA meeting. Rumor is there's going to be a vote to remove Clarissa from the board. I smiled for the first time that weekend. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Monday morning, I got a knock on my door just before sunrise. I was still in sweatpants, halfway through making coffee when I opened it to find my neighbor, Leo, standing there with a folder in one hand and a look of cautious excitement. I know you've got your own war going on, he said, glancing over his shoulder, but you need to see this. I stepped aside and let him in. Leo was a retired forensic auditor who'd moved into Oak Pines 2 years ago. We'd said the occasional hello over the fence, but we'd never had a real conversation until now. He opened the folder on my kitchen table. Inside were printouts of HOA financial statements, meeting transcripts, and copies of checks. I started digging after I saw that tow truck, he said. Didn't sit right with me, so I requested the last year's worth of financial records from the HOA. They're required to provide them within 10 business days. And they gave them to you, I asked. Eventually, he said. Clarissa stalled as long as she could, said the printer was down. Then claimed the treasurer was on vacation. I finally got this last night. And it's worse than I thought. He pointed to a series of line items labeled Community Beautification, with monthly withdrawals between $2,000 and $4,000, none of which matched any visible improvements in the neighborhood. The address these checks were deposited into? Leo continued. It's not the landscaper, not even a company. It's a P.O. box registered to someone named Marlene Voss. Never heard of her, I said. She's Clarissa's cousin, lives 2 towns over. I found a public filing showing she runs an LLC that's been inactive for 4 years. That's where the checks are going. I stared at the folder, my stomach turning. So she's laundering HOA funds through a shell company. Leo nodded. And based on the dates, it's been happening for at least 16 months. I grabbed my phone and called Officer Latham. He didn't need convincing. Within an hour, he and a plainclothes investigator from the Financial Crimes Unit were sitting at my kitchen table scanning documents. We've had our eye on a few HOAs in the county, the investigator said. But this is the first time someone handed us a paper trail this complete. Leo handed over an envelope with copies of everything. I want to see this woman off the board, he said, and I want the money back in our community. You may get more than that, the investigator replied. If this checks out and it looks like it does, Clarissa's facing felony embezzlement charges. They left with the documents, and I locked my door behind them, already thinking about what would happen when the rest of the neighborhood found out. By noon, the HOA bulletin board next to the clubhouse had a fresh notice tacked to it, handwritten, not printed. It announced an emergency meeting scheduled for the following evening in response to unsubstantiated allegations and a breach of community trust by a resident spreading misinformation. Clarissa was trying to get ahead of the fallout, but she wasn't fast enough. That evening, I walked a few blocks to the house of Trina Guzman, one of the board members who usually kept her head down during meetings. She answered the door cautiously, but when I explained why I was there, she let me in without hesitation. You've seen the financials? I asked. She nodded. Clarissa sent me a version, but it was missing entire months. I thought it was a mistake. It wasn't. I showed her Leo's full report. Her face tightened with each page. She always brushed off questions about the budget, Trina said. Told us we didn't need to worry about the accounting stuff, said the treasurer handled it. But we haven't had a treasurer since Craig moved to Florida. I hadn't known that. She's been signing everything herself, I said, Trina nodded, and refusing to hold elections. Said we didn't have enough interest. Tomorrow's meeting, I said, she's going to try to turn it into a witch hunt. I won't let her, Trina said. I'm calling the county liaison tonight. If there's no treasurer and no scheduled election, she's been in violation of our charter for months. By the time I got home, the sun was down and the street was quiet. I sat on the porch with a notebook, jotting down everything that had happened, dates, quotes, names. I wanted a timeline in case this turned into a legal mess. Halfway through, I noticed a car I didn't recognize idling across the street. It didn't belong to any of the neighbors. The driver's window rolled down just enough to see the glow of a cigarette. I watched it for a while. It didn't move. I walked back inside, grabbed my phone, and called Officer Latham again. You might want to send a cruiser through Oak Pines tonight, I said. Someone's watching my house from across the street. He didn't ask why. He just said he'd take care of it. 10 minutes later, the car pulled away without a sound. The emergency HOA meeting the next evening was standing room only. The room buzzed with tension. Clarissa sat at the front behind a folding table, wearing a blazer that looked like it came from a campaign rally. Angela and her husband sat in the front row, arms crossed, whispering to each other. I stood near the back next to Leo and Trina. The county liaison, a woman named Patricia Withers, stood off to the side with a briefcase and a clipboard. Clarissa tapped her microphone. We're here tonight to address some very serious accusations made by a resident who has consistently refused to participate in community events, has harassed guests, and has now taken it upon himself to spread damaging and false information. She glanced toward me, but I didn't blink. Let me be clear, she continued. The HOA operates under strict guidelines. Our finances are reviewed regularly, and I have always acted in the best interest of Oak Pines. Patricia stepped forward. Actually, that's what we're here to determine, she said. Because after receiving several formal complaints, including one from a verified board member, we've initiated a compliance review. Per municipal code, any HOA under investigation must immediately suspend discretionary spending and cede financial authority to an independent auditor. Clarissa froze. Angela stood up. You can't do that. This is a private association. Patricia didn't even turn toward her. You're mistaken. When an HOA collects dues from residents, it falls under county jurisdiction. And since there's no treasurer on record and no election has been held for over a year, your board is non-compliant. A murmur spread through the room. Clarissa reached for a stack of papers. These accusations are politically motivated. This entire thing is a smear campaign. Leo stepped forward and held up a copy of the check trail. He didn't speak. He just handed it to Patricia. She flipped through it slowly, then looked up. We'll be turning this over to the district attorney's office. This constitutes potential wire fraud, embezzlement, and falsification of official documents. Clarissa stood up. This is ridiculous. I demand this meeting be adjourned, her voice cracked. Patricia ignored her and addressed the room. In the interim, residents may nominate a temporary board to manage basic functions. An election will be scheduled within 45 days. Until then, all prior board decisions are suspended and all accounts frozen. Angela stormed out. Her husband followed. Brandon kicked over a folding chair on his way after them. Clarissa didn't move. She just stared at the table, her hands clenched into fists. I walked out into the night, the warm air buzzing with quiet conversations and low laughter. Neighbors who'd never spoken more than a word to me nodded as I passed. Some clapped me on the back. Others just looked relieved out by the curb. Leo lit a cigar and handed me a folded piece of paper. What's this? Nomination form, he said. You'd make a damn good board member. I shook my head. I'm not looking to run anything. Good, he said. That's exactly why you should. I looked down the street toward Clarissa's house. The porch light was off. For the first time in 3 years, the place looked small. I tucked the form in my pocket. I hadn't decided anything yet, but I knew one thing for sure. The days of Clarissa running Oak Pines like her personal kingdom were over. Tuesday morning, I stepped outside to find a folded letter tucked beneath my windshield wiper. No envelope. Just thick cardstock with my name written in looping cursive. I open it slowly and read, "Victor, you've made your point, but some of us still believe in civility. If you want to be part of this neighborhood, you'll need to decide what side you're on. See?" I read it twice. Then I walked it straight inside and dropped it into a manila folder I'd labeled HOA, Evidence. That folder was already thick with documents, photos, and printed emails. This was just another page in a story that had taken a sharp turn. Clarissa had gone quiet since the meeting, but her allies weren't done. That afternoon, a knock came from the back gate. I found Donnie Greaves, the HOA's former security liaison, standing there in a tucked-in polo and mirrored sunglasses that seemed permanently fused to his face. He looked up from a clipboard. "We're doing a voluntary inspection of all tool sheds, fences, and auxiliary structures. Mind if I take a look around?" I crossed my arms. "You're not with the HOA anymore." He tapped the clipboard. Still a concerned neighbor. "Just trying to help keep things tidy." "I've got cameras back here now," I said. "So if you're thinking of stepping on my property without a warrant, I suggest you rethink that." He hesitated. "No need to get defensive, just thought maybe we could smooth things over." "There's talk you might be running for the board." "Who's talking?" Donnie shrugged. "Doesn't matter. What matters is people like order. They don't want chaos. Clarissa might have bent a few corners, but she kept the place predictable. She stole from us, allegedly." I didn't answer. I just waited. Donnie sniffed once, turned on his heel, and left through the gate without another word. That evening, I got a call from Trina. She'd just gotten off the phone with the county's interim auditor, and the numbers were worse than expected. "Over $60,000 misappropriated," she said. "Transferred in chunks to that fake LLC, but that's not it. They found a second account, one no one on the board knew existed." My pulse quickened. "Whose name is it under?" Marlene Voss again. "But the address listed is Clarissa's." That explained the silence. She wasn't just in trouble, she was staring down prison time. Trina continued. "The county's filing charges, multiple counts. This isn't just a slap on the wrist. They've already frozen her personal assets." I hung up and sat in the quiet of my living room for a while. Outside, sprinklers clicked on across the street. Porch lights glowed like nothing had changed, but something had cracked underneath the surface of Oak Pines. The illusion was gone. The next day, Leo invited me over for lunch. His kitchen smelled like smoked paprika and slow-roasted pork. He handed me a plate and motioned to the dining table where a laptop sat open with a spreadsheet. "So I've been thinking," he said between bites. "We can't just clean house. We need to replace the whole structure. New bylaws, term limits, financial transparency." I nodded. "Start from scratch, exactly. But it'll only work if we have people who aren't looking to control everyone's mailbox color." I chuckled. "You mean no more clipboard patrols?" Leo grinned. "Not unless they're handing out barbecue." He showed me a draft of the new charter. 3 board positions, monthly open meetings, required public posting of all expenses, and the big one, no more private fines. All violations would require mediation through a neutral third party. I spent the next 2 hours helping him tighten the language. We agreed to present it at the upcoming election meeting. 2 days later, the county prosecutor's office held a press conference outside the courthouse downtown. Clarissa didn't show, but her lawyer did, and he didn't deny the charges. Fraud, embezzlement, forging official documents, misuse of community funds, 4 felony counts, each carrying jail time. The investigator read off the list with the dry precision of someone used to dealing with white-collar crime. The press asked whether any other residents were being investigated. The prosecutor confirmed that one other person, Angela's husband, Rick had cashed 2 checks under the same fake business name. He was being charged as a co-conspirator. Angela, to no one's surprise, had already left town. That weekend, the neighborhood met under a big rented tent in the community park. Trina opened the meeting with a clear voice, laying out the charges, the consequences, and the plan for moving forward. Then she stepped aside, and Patricia Withers returned to the podium. "The county is placing Oak Pines under temporary administrative oversight," she said. "Residents will elect 3 interim board members today. Those members will serve until the end of the fiscal year, at which point a regular election will be held under the new charter." She motioned toward a folding table with a box of ballots and a sign and sheet. Leo stood and nominated me. I didn't argue. I knew that if I didn't run, someone like Donnie would. Voting took less than 20 minutes. By the end of the hour, the results were in. I had the most votes. Trina came in second, and a quiet woman named Ava, who I barely knew but had apparently worked in city planning, rounded out the trio. As Patricia handed us the results, she leaned in slightly and said, "You're going to want to look at the maintenance contracts next. Something tells me this rabbit hole goes deeper." She was right. The following week, Ava uncovered a series of no-bid contracts for landscaping, pool maintenance, and lighting repairs, all signed by Clarissa, and paid to companies registered out of state. None of them had performed any work. One company didn't even exist anymore. We sent the information to the county prosecutor. More charges were added to the case file. Back at home, I started noticing subtle changes. Neighbors waved instead of staring. Kids rode their bikes past my driveway without cutting across the lawn. Someone even returned my garden gnome, the one Brandon had kicked over, repaired and freshly painted. Leo hosted a block party that Sunday. Real food, real music, no speeches. Just people finally feeling like they weren't being watched with a telescope from behind a lace curtain. As I stood by the grill flipping burgers, a man approached with a hesitant expression. "Victor, right? I'm Mark. Just moved in last month." I shook his hand. "Welcome to Oak Pines." He glanced around. "Heard this place had a reputation, but folks say it's changing." "Yeah," I said. "Took a few bruises, but we're getting there." He nodded. "Glad to hear it. My wife's a nurse. She's had enough of power trips from hospital admin. Last thing we wanted was more of the same at home." I laughed. "You'll fit in just fine." As the sun dipped behind the rooftops, Trina walked over with a clipboard, not to issue violations, but to collect ideas. "Community garden," she said. "Dog area by the park, monthly potlucks." People are starting to dream again. I looked around at the tables filled with neighbors, some I'd fought with, others I'd barely known, sharing food and stories like they belonged to something real. Clarissa's house sat dark at the end of the street. For sale sign in the yard. No more golf cart. No more clipboards. No more forged letters taped to doors. I didn't feel triumphant, just calm. We'd stood up, we'd cleaned house, and we'd built something better, not because we wanted power, but because we were tired of being told who we had to be in our own homes. And this time, we weren't backing down.